Welcome to another edition of World Talks here on TVP World. I'm your host Benjamin Lee, and please join me and my guest on this next interview. Amid mounting global scrutiny, a high-level Ukrainian delegation is in the United States to discuss a potential peace framework just days after a major missile strike on Kiev and a surprising leadership reshuffle in President Zelensky's inner circle. Joining us today on TVP World to discuss the stakes, the strategy, and the shifting diplomatic currents is Martin Sklenár, former Slovakian defense minister, a seasoned expert in security policy as well as transatlantic relations, with deep insights into Ukraine's evolving wartime diplomacy. Hello, sir, and welcome to TVP World.
Good evening.
So given your experience in defense policy as well as NATO coordination, how do you assess the viability of the US-Ukraine peace plan, especially on the remaining points when it comes to territory and security guarantees? Are these gaps negotiable, or do they pose some sort of long-term obstacle?
Well, what we hear from actually both sides is that they are very keen to negotiate, which is good. We have seen the history and the progress of this whole negotiation, which started quite badly on what seems to be a Russian basis for a proposal to settle the war and the conflict. And now we're back in a more acceptable situation where we see Ukraine driving the discussion with the United States, making sure that Ukraine's interests and principles and red lines are taken care of. So that's very good. I mean, this is the place that we want to see. This is what we want to have on the news. The Ukrainian and the U.S. delegation. I mean, very frankly, I would like to see the Europeans being part of this discussion as well, because the setup that will be in place if and when a negotiation is taken to a negotiated solution, the situation will be most influencing the security situation in Europe. So I would expect Europeans to be asking to be involved in this kind of discussions with the Ukrainians and the United States. The topics that we understand are now the main part of the discussion is certainly the territorial questions, but also the security guarantees. They are very intertwined and very connected, and they deserve a very deep discussion. And it's good to see the parties discussing it so thoroughly and taking the time to dive deep and come with acceptable solutions, because not every solution that one side or the other could imagine would be acceptable for both of them, or even then in the broader negotiation with Russia and the Europeans, hopefully.
Right, like I mentioned, there seems to be a sticking point when it comes to territorial security guarantee stuff. And of course, the time is also ticking down. How realistic is it that these issues can actually be resolved, or at least reach a satisfying enough conclusion before President Trump's envoy heads to Moscow?
Well, very frankly, I would not expect that this would be solved very quickly. I mean, those are very, serious questions pertaining to sovereignty, territorial integrity, and the Ukrainian constitution. It's very, very sensitive and very difficult to advance in it. Even though we hear, I mean, the signals that come from Florida from the negotiations are all talking about how constructive the atmosphere is. So that seems to be. A good thing, but how realistic is it? Ukraine has already signaled that there are no issues that it will not negotiate. We see them negotiating on the territorial questions, right? I mean, that's what's happening right now. So I would expect that there's two, so to say, the two poles to that discussion. One pole is the territorial issues and how much of the territory is actually being discussed. But on the other hand, there's also the security guarantees, which are also a complex discussion about how the situation could look like, and if one of them is advancing, then the other one has to advance as well, because it's so closely connected. The more guarantees, the better probably the discussion on the territorial questions and vice versa, right? I mean, the better the guarantees, the better territory, the less is it a question of territorial cuts, then the easier also the discussion on security guarantees probably gets. Even though, I mean, I'm simplifying this, but I can understand every move in this has to be very thoroughly thought through, and basically there's a lot that has to go into considerations in this negotiation.
Right, and with the negotiation already being so complex, what do you think about the reshuffling of Zelensky's inner circle at this very critical juncture? Does it add even more chaos into the mess? Do you think there's a strategy behind it? Is it out of necessity?
Well, right now, I think the Ukrainian delegation is still on track to what their strategy was before the whole political earthquake began in Kiev. So as for right now, I would expect that they would follow a strategy that they agreed to in their, so to say, old constellation. Certainly, this is something that is closely watched, is something that Ukraine, and especially President Zelensky, has to take into account and deal with. That's something that takes away from the possibility of focusing on the negotiation itself. But yeah, let's see how this develops, and how much we will see, whether it has an influence on how actually the results are getting in. Of course, Mr. Yermak was supposed to be the head of the Ukrainian delegation, so the removal of the head of the delegation obviously has an impact on who's leading the negotiation. But there's people taking his place, following the strategy, making sure that the objectives are reached, or the principles and red lines are held. So as for right now, I would say it's quite unpleasant for the Ukrainian side, but it's not something that they are not able to deal with.
Right, I'm also curious about the swift appointment of Oksana Makarova by President Zelensky. And of course, we're all here trying to read into the tea leaves a little bit and see whether or not we can insinuate a little bit of that appointment and what is Zelensky's kind of stance towards the Washington administration going forward. Do you think there's any indication or anything that we can read into it?
I would expect. Of course, she's a very good candidate, very well connected, and very well known also in the U.S., which tells me that this is the relationship that the Ukrainians consider the most important. The relationship with the United States is not somebody who would be well versed in or had a good network previously in the Russian Federation. So it's not, the focus is not on negotiating with Russia per se. The focus here in the team will be on making sure that the US understands the Ukrainian position, and that the team is able to explain all the principles and interests and objectives of the negotiation to the United States and to the representatives of the United States. So, and she has a broad background, not only in diplomacy and state service, but also in business, which makes it even more attractive for the U.S. side. So the only thing that I would read from the tea leaves is that it's very important to make sure that Ukraine and the U.S. can have a dialogue which will continue and they will make sure that they understand each other and can actually discuss in the same kind of language, if you will, so that the negotiation is successful.
Right. There's also a Wall Street Journal report that is suggesting that Trump's peace strategy also centers on some economic incentives rather than just military pressure. Do you think that this have any grounds, whether or not this economic factor will indeed be the gravity of some of these negotiations?
That is, for me, that is part of the language. I mean, if we see the U.S. Language of diplomacy right now is economy, it's business. And it's deals that the U.S. and especially the president can do with countries, and based on that, the rating or the ranking of countries in the United States, certainly from the administration point of view, is being done. So in this sense, it's certainly something that every country is trying to make sure that they have the possibility to generate the best possible portfolio of ideas and projects to talk about, well, at least to bring to the table and see what are the possibilities to work on together with the United States. This is a strategy that is, as I say, followed by many countries. It's a new quality of the relationship that we have, most of the countries now with the United States. And in that sense, I would expect Ukraine to follow a similar pattern, of course, being in a much more complex and difficult situation with the peace negotiation going on as well.
Right, but this has ruffled some feathers as well. I think, according to the report, a lot of people are now worried that perhaps with the deal-making part of this equation, Ukraine's interest might be sidelined due to some more economic incentives between Russia and the United States. Do you think these worries are warranted, or do you think this is just another negotiation tactic that the Washington administration is pursuing in order to reach some peace in Ukraine?
I'm sure that the economic relationship or a business relationship even or business projects between US and Russia for the US are something that they are interested in to see what is possible, what is realistic. And in that sense, I wouldn't put it off the table. What we see from the U.S. administration in the past year is that they actually come up with big ideas. They come up with projects. They come up with initiatives and possible deals. And as we have seen many times now in the almost 1 year of the Trump administration. Not all of them come into fruition fully or at the end, or when they come to a decision phase, they have changed quite a lot. So I would expect that there would be a similar progress here as well. We see that there's business interest, of course, that then there's attention to the negotiation itself, and then the best possible opportunities are identified not only in the business sphere or domain, but it's probably a combination then of a business/peace negotiation that will take place, and it sounds much worse than what it could be, right? I mean, we have seen this before. This was a similar situation with the raw minerals or raw materials deal between the U.S. And Ukraine, which started out as something that was really out of the extraordinary, and then gradually got framed into a very normal and civilized discussion between two countries. So I would expect a similar development here in this case as well.
And last but not least, we also saw a major attack on Kiev happening just before the talks. Is there a concern that Russia is using violence to shape negotiation outcomes?
Yes. I mean, that's a very clear answer. This is a tactic that Russia pursues relentlessly. We've seen this especially in the pre-winter and winter times when Russia targets civilian populations, and we can have a discussion whether this is useful or not. Ukrainians have suffered through. This is already what is now the fourth winter that they are suffering in the time of this full-scale invasion, and they are still fighting. They are still holding their ground. So from one point, it doesn't really look like there's much that Russia gains from this. The more concerning development is what we see that Vladimir Putin has clearly said that he doesn't want to sign any agreement with the current Ukrainian government, which tells me that basically, even if we get proposals of all kinds of settled solutions, his intention is and never was actually to sign anything with Ukraine and with Volodymyr Zelensky, which basically puts the whole attacks on civil populations even in a much under a much bigger scrutiny as something that is not delivering any results, and is simply something that Russia and Vladimir Putin probably wants to do just to impose himself and to make sure that people fear him, especially in Ukraine. I would expect.
Right, so that definitely sets the tone for what the stakes are when it comes to this negotiation. Thank you so much for your input and insight. Really appreciate it, and thanks for being with us on TVP World.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a good night.
And thank you for tuning into this edition of World Talks. But for more news, update, and commentary, please stay tuned to TVP World.